The Gentlementor.
So here's something I noticed about my father as he grew older. There were only two things that were important to him that were the utmost important every single day. Number one was the weather, and number two is the price of gas.
The price of gas. Okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
thought you were going to say bowel
And
movement.
where
That
to
was my
find,
grandma.
no, because the weather had everything to do with, I guess as he aged, the weather probably affected his bones, his joints, and whatever.
That's
Naturally,
the
it does.
earmark of everyone I consider old, is that their first
Right,
question is
right,
almost always, how's the weather? It's always
right,
weather related. So, yeah.
right. And then of course the price of gas, and he's always talking about the price of gas. And I was like, I'm driving down the road with him, and we see, there's gas. Oh, I bought gas for 9 cents cheaper down the road over there. It's like, I don't care. 9 cents cheaper. That's pretty steep. But still it's like, gas, in the sense of 2 or 3 cents per gallon, and you have a 13-gallon tank, what does that equate to?
Right.
50, 75 cents. And I mean, and I I don't know. I get it. I mean, if you're on a budget, you're on a budget. Who's to say that 75 cents won't make or break you? But I mean, if the gas is convenient and the line's not long, I might go for the 50-cent extra option and get the gas.
they have the convenience stores, and they charge the convenience fees. And sometimes you feel like I want to save the money, and sometimes you feel like, I don't need to save the money right now. My time's more valuable. My sanity is more valuable. So yeah.
Oh man, the Sam's by our house is absolutely ridiculous.
Agreed.
It is just you. I mean, and here's what I decided. My car fills on the right side, the passenger side. And first of all, I'm thinking, why in the world have we let go of these cars that, you remember the cars that you pulled the license tag down? I had one, my 78,
yeah.
my 78 Cutlass Supreme, you pull the license tag down and there was the gas guy. So no matter which side you went on,
always on the right side.
You could put gas, it's always right smack dab in the middle. It's always right there. So I have a right side, and I think most cars in Springfield anyway are all left side fuel fill.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, when I realized that I don't have to wait in line for gas anymore,
just go to the other side.
I am never, that is going to be the number one thing I look for if I ever buy a new car. Is they're going to oh, this is the brand new Mercedes, BMW, whatever. Oh, which side is the gas going in? Left side. No, I don't want it. That's exactly the way I'm going to be.
Deal breaker.
Yeah. Next. What do you got? What else you got? So is that a sign? I'm getting old?
Man,
is that a sign that I'm like,
no?
Because the 23-year-old Mark wouldn't have cared. He was in his 78 Cutlass Supreme, camel, gold,
feeling it,
and he wouldn't have cared which side the gas was on. He would have been like, yeah, what is it? What do I got to do?
It's all part and parcel of that same thing that we talked about, or started to talk about, or we've started to talk about a few times. It's that the what do you want to call it? Plasticity, the rigidity of who we are. Just like our brains start soft and squishy, and the older we get, our brains get hard and firm. The older we start young and we're open-minded and willing to try new things, and as we get older, obviously not so much. We have our favorite things. We have priority things. I'm sorry, I have a hangnail that's bleeding.
Well, you should get a septic pencil or something.
Or I'll dip it in the scotch. There we go. All better.
No, you're going to ruin good scotch with hemoglobin.
Oh, positive. So yeah, we are flexible, pliable things that become more and more rigid with time. It affects every aspect of it. That's where we started, was with the discussion about clothing. Stay young by changing your clothes, and then that's one of the signs that you are becoming old, is that you don't change your clothes. And we talked about hair, and of course music, and all these things. And so I think it's all just the overwhelming. What would you want to call that? There's a word for that. If it was a society, we would call it thing. I can't think of the word. That's the way everything's going.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the thing, not being able to think about the words that you want to speak.
Yeah.
Don't come out of your mouth.
Everything is moving from
You get
soft,
trapped up here somewhere.
soft to rigid. Everything in your life, everything about you, you become a more defined person. You're
Okay.
learning who you
All right.
are. You know, where we go through the, I want to find myself, and I go through the experiences of life and education and all those things that make us who we are. You know, that's all part of who we are. Okay, well, I've become this person. Well, at some point, those things kind of start to set. They kind of gel and then mold, and then we kind of get kind of stuck in those. And some of that's good and some of it's bad. I mean, I think that it's a really good thing where, like, we are going through the thing with the exit of the dads. Like, all of the dads died. What was that, last year or the year before, whenever that happened? And so all the dads died, and it was like, okay, so that row of soldiers just kind of marched off the map there. And so now the next row of soldiers lines up in place. Well, this isn't quite us yet. We're kind of the next row behind these guys. But these guys are all doing their little dance, and eventually they're going to shuffle off too, and then we're next. So that explains a lot about all of the kind of profound soul-level anxiety that we feel when our dads go, because we know it's not that physical human person. It is that sense of reassurance that they represent in our lives, and that's what they take when they go, because we've got their stuff and we know more than they ever knew. Okay, well, if we've got all their stuff and we know more than they ever knew, what's missing? The reassurance is missing, because now the responsibility falls to us. That's where the rigid part actually is kind of good, because the people coming after us need to see us as a sort of stability factor. And if we're crazy flying all over the place, not sure what we are or who we are or what we like or anything, we're not going to represent stability for those other generations that are getting ready to do their dance coming up behind us. So some of that is actually good. That's how we maintain moral standards and behavioral standards and stuff, is that sort of rigidity. The problem that happens with all sorts of like entropy and not entropy, what's the other thing? When you're not in motion, when you're sitting still, when you're static, is you will break down, and you will calcify, and you will become
Atrophy.
Atrophy, not entropy, atrophy. And you kind of stagnate in that place, and you become rigid about all sorts of things that you don't need to be rigid about. Things that you can let other people be who they are, and it's cool. But because you've calcified, those things become threatening. And so you have to lash out, and it becomes
That's really good stuff.
elderly people versus younger people.
I feel like we could have a webinar on this, and we could charge people like $2,000 to come to our webinar and figure out what things you need to be mentally, what things you need to be mentally rigid about, and what things you need to be mentally flexible with. And I always go back to technology. Technology is one of the things that I always go back to. And I'm wondering right now, is that you and I grew up in it. We're pretty technical, and we've kept up pretty well. Our fathers, not so much. Our kids, even more so. Their kids, even more than them, probably. At what point will technology not be the thing that becomes the most necessary to be rigid as flexible? Because now my son's going to grow up with technology all throughout his life. And so getting something new, getting the upgraded version is going to be the norm in his life. That's not the norm in my life. It has been now since I'm, 2025, something along that lines. And I got my first computer and just start moving forward. And, it's always an upgrading process. So more than half of my life, I've learned you have to continue to upgrade and advance software and products and hardware and whatnot. My son's going to know that. Our kids are going to know that for their entire life. Is that everything has to be upgraded, everything has to be replaced. So I'm wondering if that is going to eventually phase out because I look at the things like crypto is one of those things where I hear people my age and even younger than I talk about, hey, I don't know what this is all about. This crypto, it's beyond anything that I can comprehend. No, take a minute and learn about it. It's not that hard. When you realize it makes a lot of sense to actually not make sense. You're just free enough to go, okay, I see what's happening here. And I don't know. Yeah, it does. And I think that's a lot of it is as you need to be rigid. I like what you were saying about that, because there are people that are going to come after you, and you've got to have younger generations beyond us that are going to have to be to the point where they're like, okay, we finally have someone stable we can count on. So those things I think we need to be rigid about, but there are other things that we have to remain flexible about. And I think that what you said too, about letting other people be who they are and being okay with it. Because really, if I'm not okay with the way someone is, I just create a bunch of stress in my own mind. And I'm just dwelling on it.
Exactly.
And I'm going, why did he say that? Why does he believe that? Why do they think that? Why do they want him to be president? Why do they want her to be president? What is all this? How come they're... And it's just like, I don't care. I don't care. Doug, vote whoever you want to. I don't care. I love you anyway. We have so much more in common. We have so much more of good that we do together that it doesn't really matter all these things. If you were to all of a sudden change teams, I'd be like, okay, fine.
There's another team?
That's weird. But
that
okay.
is weird. I didn't know there were other teams.
Yeah, there are other teams. Anyway,
Okay.
I'm done. I'm ranting.
No.
I like what you were saying. What you were saying was really good.
Everything that you said, basically, in my estimation, from what I heard, boils down to one thing. And I think all these things, this is where they all kind of line up and show the parallel. This is to me, this is one of the hidden truths of becoming older.
Okay, I'm ready.
This process of these different generations phasing in and phasing out, the generation that went and then they marched off, and we know we're coming up.
Yeah, our turn's coming.
That
for
is
sure.
scary as shit.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
That becomes the catalyst for this kind of blanket of anxiety that tries to lay itself over people as they get older. And it's almost always, man, and this is, woo, I'm going to want to high five myself and take an offering on this point that I'm about to make. Here's something we've never talked about. I don't think we've ever talked about this, and I don't know why. But if people, thank you, glory. If you want to talk about racism, if you want to talk about racism, or you want to talk about what we're talking about right now, what you're talking about is the same thing, because the root is the same thing. The root is fear brought on by ignorance. I don't know what that is, so I'm afraid of it, and I'm going to react based on that fear. Whether you're talking about Bitcoin, old people, young people, black people, white people, you're always talking about the same thing. I do not recognize that. I'm scared, and so I'm going to respond based on that. Your thinking is what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. If you want to get rid of anxiety, the way to do that is to take action. If you don't know about this thing, then the way to dispel that ignorance is with knowledge. So like you said, sit down and learn about it. That's how you take on anxiety. That's how you get rid of irrational responses in your own life. Recognize that that's an irrational response and then destroy it. I'm responding irrationally. We see our parents die. Fear. We see our young people getting bigger. They're going to take over someday. They're not ready to take over. More anxiety. Because we're the middle. Technology. Our parents were almost zero technology. Our kids are almost 100% technology. We're the 50% technology people. We're caught in the middle.
Yep.
This is the experience of being caught in the middle. This is where languishing happens, when you're caught in the middle. You're stuck in the middle between these two things. So what we feel is that tension. Now, the way to dispel that tension is to figure out, of course, what's the thing that's making you scared, then learn about it. That gets rid of the ignorance, and it gets rid of all your compulsion to act irrationally. It's the grown-up version of getting rid of the boogeyman. You're doing it for yourself. The closet's
All right.
in your head. There you go. Go forth and prosper.
Man, that's good. I like it.
That's why, I told you about like Lloyd, Jackie's dad, and like this guy, my father-in-law, and he had a 50 disc changer in his car, and it was half Queen and half classical music. Till the
50
day
disc?
till the day he died.
Who gets a 50 disc changer?
An old guy with money who has a really cool car.
Okay, all right.
And
Cool
when
with
you
that.
go to
Whatever.
the family dinners, is he sitting with the blue hairs talking about the weather and the gas prices?
No.
He's hanging out with the kids, talking about whatever the kids are talking about, and making jokes and cutting up.
Yep.
It's a different mindset. And it's a mindset that decides, I think the first thing you have to decide is that you're going to reject the fear, because fear's coming at you. Fear, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, anxiety or what, or the pressure of life or stress. What it all equals is fear coming at you. And all that matters is how you're going to respond to that. You're either going to come up with a response that satisfies your soul or a response that is unsatisfactory. And
Doug, what is the opposite of fear?
The opposite of fear is love.
Yes. Yes.
That's it. That's people want to know how to cure racism. That's how you cure racism. You get rid of ignorance. You get rid of fear. Then what's there? Love.
I'd say one of the best, I guess, axioms that I have been able to install in my life that I think has done me the most good is this simple one: fill in the gaps with trust. So anytime there's a gap in any type of relationship or anything, fill it in with trust. Too often we are so prone to fill it in with fear and doubt and whatever it is you fill in. I can remember numerous of times being in the car with my dad, seeing certain people on the street of different races, different ethnicities, and doing different things. And then all of a sudden my dad saying, they're up to no good. You see those guys over there, they're probably up to no good. They're probably doing whatever. And then labeling whatever it is there. I am today staying in a hotel in Lafayette, Louisiana. Beautiful city. I'm going to do Trump here. Beautiful city. Beautiful people in this city. They're fantastic.
Probably
phenomenal
some of the
people.
most beautiful people
Probably some of the most beautiful people
that have
that I've
been
ever
people,
seen.
ever.
That have ever been people anywhere in Louisiana or anywhere in Lafayette.
Since Paramecium first crawled forth from the primordial ooze.
So the racial diversity here is pretty equal. And I'm walking through the parking lot yesterday as I'm leaving to go to my meeting, and these two gentlemen are sitting there, and they're just young African American dudes hanging out on the bench, and they look at me like, how are you going to respond to these two guys sitting here on the bench smoking a cigarette? How are you going to respond? And I could feel it, and I could hear the words of my dad immediately say, those two guys are up to no good. And I looked over at those guys, and I said with a big old smile, man, you guys got some high quality humidity in this town. And they both about fell off the bench. And they just thought that was so hilarious. They were like, man, you have a good day. You have a good day.
You surprised?
I was like, I surprised it because I filled in the gap with trust. These guys weren't up to no good. They were on a smoke break. They work here at the hotel. They've been washing towels and cleaning rooms and whatever. I don't know what they've been doing, but God bless them. And they're just having a smoke break. And I just walked by and have a human interaction with them that had nothing to do with their status, their social, economic status, has nothing to do with their race, had nothing to do with any of that. I'm just like, that just felt so good. And I'm like pat myself on the back, going, yeah, hey, I had a good encounter with African American and Black people.
It feels good to have positive interactions with other human beings.
Yes.
It's so much better than negative ones.
It is. Oh my goodness, it is.
The Gentlementor.